Hey everybody, it's ScomletX, and welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and today I'll be playing another Arena Cube draft. Without further ado, let's get into the draft. Tons of incredibly powerful options as always. We've got Wrath of God for a more controlling deck, Luminarch Aspirant, great 2-drop for any aggressive strategy. Got Golos, Tireless Pilgrim if we want to go for a 5-color build. This will be really good in that, as it'll be both a ramp enabler and a payoff with its 7-mana ability. Atraxa's another payoff for a 5-color build, as well as a potential Reanimator target, but it is a little difficult to get the Reanimator deck to really function. In the cube, there's not a ton of great cards to go for it. There's a Garruk Relentless for a solid green Planeswalker, some cheap interaction, mainly Lonely End, but Terra Sunder at 4 mana is kinda cheap too. Lots of super sweet stuff. I think I'm feeling pretty aggressive today. I've just drafted a couple controlling decks between blue-white and blue-black, so let's see if we can't do something super aggro now and pick up the Luminarch Aspirant. And it is really nice to see that this is original Luminarch Aspirant. This is not the nerfed Alchemy version that they had on for a while. That was a Luminarch Aspirant, except that it only triggered during your upkeep, I think, instead of combat, or your end step or something. But it wouldn't like trigger right before combat every turn. So it was definitely weaker, but this is the original super powerful version. Very nice aggressive card. And speaking of very nice aggressive cards, nothing great for white. Rabble Rousing's pretty expensive and kind of dirtily, but it is really explosive. There is Embercleave though, which is a massive, massive finisher in red. Costs 1 less to cast for each attacking creature you control, so you can often cast this for 3 or even 2 mana. And it's going to give something +1/+1 double strike and trample, usually just going to kill your opponent the moment you slam this on the board, so Embercleave's a real big deal. We can take that over mainly Spell Queller, although I suppose we could go for like blue-white tempo here and take Spell Queller, a really aggressive blue-white deck with a bunch of cheap creatures, and cards like Spell Queller to tempo our opponent out, keep them locked out of dealing with our early threats just long enough to kill them. So that could be an interesting place to go too, but I think I'd rather take Embercleave today. Pack 1, pick 3, now we have a Legion Warboss, or Volcanic Spite, or Thraben Inspector. 3 very, very nice options. The Inspector is not super aggressive, but it is a great value play, giving us that clue. The Volcanic Spite is also not super duper aggressive, but it helps get things out of the way while being some burn. Think just getting aggro, I'm going to take Legion Warboss here. Although we're not tied to white yet, we could also take Kolaghan's Command as a very nice piece of interaction, a very flexible one that's always going to be a 2-for-1. Super nice spell there. And if I want to just completely not get tied to anything yet, I could just take Llanowar Elves as one of the strongest cards in the pack. 1-mana Mana Dorks are pretty gross. Being able to ramp up from 1 mana turn 1 to 3 mana turn 2, a pretty big deal. So Llanowar Elves is definitely an option too, but I want to beat some faces down today. I'm going to take a Legion Warboss. Now we've got a Royal Eruption. That is definitely a great burn spell for any aggressive strategy, because it can shoot the face or the blockers. Also a Lorehold Command for Boros. And for just white, the Evangel's really good. Super, super flexible. 2 mana for a 3/1 on curve. And it taps something down when you play it. And if you draw it later in the game, it's just perfect for however much mana you have. If you have 8 mana, then you just play 4 3/1s and tap 4 of their cards. I actually think Evangel might be the pick. This card is deceptively good, and it's pretty busted. Eternal Wanderer, another great card, but it's not going to be good in a super aggro deck. Mirel would be good in a pretty aggressive strategy, but I think I'm going to keep taking low curve cards, and I'll take Evangel. It's Evangel versus Royal Eruption here, and I'll go for the Evangel. Pick 5 now. Magda, great way to ramp up real quick. Feel like the aggressive decks are at their absolute best if you can fully commit to a mono-color deck, possibly. So Ossification is also just great, and will be better towards potentially pushing us to mono-white here. So that could be a place we want to go. because missing on one of your colors is super, super deadly in an aggro deck, because the biggest upside you have of playing aggro versus the more mid-rangey decks is that you're hitting the ground running and you're casting your spells underneath your opponent. So if you stumble on mana and you don't cast your spells every turn because you're missing your second color, or you're missing double red or double white or something, you lose a lot of momentum in an aggro deck. So we can try to get towards monocolored. I think I'd like to. So I'm going to potentially go ossification here, choosing to attempt to move towards mono white over mono red because I've already done mono red mainly, and these videos are partially for your entertainment. It's not just because I like drafting. I do like to do my best to keep things at least a little bit interesting for you all. Now we have Touch the Spirit Realm for another fine removal spell in white, but Worm Coil's a great finisher for literally any deck. 6 mana is a bit much for mono white, mono red, or Boros aggro, but I think Worm Coil Engine is a ridiculous enough card to potentially be worth it. Speaking of ridiculous cards, Crucius is kind of insane also. You just keep discarding a card to seek a better card every turn, and you get treasures every time you do it. That might be a reason to maybe go Rakdos here. I'll actually take Crucius a little speculatively. Well, there's Maul the Skyclave, so I'll take that. Although we could take Falconwrath Aristocrat to go with Crucius towards Rakdos. This is a good sacrifice card. Actually isn't that insane. Just a 4/1 Flying Haste. 4/1 Flying Haste that's hard to kill, basically. That's it. Cruelty of Gix is one of the Reanimator cards, which is pretty cool. Triome could help us if we do some combination of these colors. I think I'm going to take them all, though. When I have opportunities to take great aggressive white cards, I'm going to do that. So we have that mono-white potential strategy. But if there's no like great mono-white card, I think that's when I'll get a little speculative with our options. What does Collective Effort do? Destroys a big creature, puts a counter on your whole board, destroys an enchantment. This is actually not very good. But it's probably better in cube than it was otherwise. Because your opponent's going to have a power 4 greater creature a little more often. I think I'd rather just take Revoker. Main deck Planeswalker hate real easily. Okay, Spell Queller, speculating towards blue-white tempo. Kolagon's Command towards Rakdos, pick 11 here. We might want to be heading in that direction if we see that late. Crucius was pretty late as well. And we're only 1 pack in, so it is not the end of the world to drop white here. Still have 6 cards deep. No, 5 cards deep. That's not bad for pack 2 pivot. Definitely keep that in mind. Jadar seems excellent for Rakdos, although Lorehold Command's excellent for Boros. Seeing Crucius and Kolagon's Command, I'm liking the Rakdos potential here, so I'll take Jadar, go for Rakdos Sacrifice. Now we can take Judith for Rakdos. Alright, yeah, we're going that way. Sorry, mono white aggro, I did try. Can't say I didn't try to end up in that strategy. Probably slightly to the detriment of my deck here, where if I hopped on Rakdos earlier, we'd be in an even better spot. This also looks like it would have been a good draft pod for Golos nonsense, getting a 5-color card, like second from last pick there. Alright, so Rakdos, we just want to play a bunch of incredibly aggressive creatures and cheap removal in general, as well as get some value from some sacrifice synergies with cards like Jadar. So, we didn't get that Priest of Forgotten Gods because I took a white spell over it, so that's a bit awkward. Here we can very easily take Fable of the Mirror Breaker. It's one of the strongest red cards ever printed, so when we're in the color, it's super easy to slam dunk it, no matter what our red deck is trying to do. But yeah, looks like we have a lot of cards that are really good for aggro in general. We don't need to do any sacrifice synergy cards. I mean, even Jadar is fine without sacrifice synergies, because it's still going to be attacking for 3 damage a turn by itself if our opponent doesn't have any creatures on board, because we hit them with the zombie and Jadar, then we get a new zombie, every single turn. It does get a bit better, though, if we do find sacrifice synergies. I don't think Gray Merchant looks very good in here. We're not likely to have a heavy Black Devotion, so I'm not very interested in that. Rankle is excellent with Jadar and sacrifice synergies in general. I do like Obliterating Bolt a lot, but I think Rankle looks pretty perfect here. If you want to be diligent and you want to win a lot of games, you should do your best to take cheap interaction over almost everything else. So that is one of those picks that may be strictly trying to win. It's better to just guarantee that you've got that Obliterating Bolt in your deck than it is to take the Rankle synergy card to go with Jadar here. But Rankle's definitely more fun. Okay, now we can easily take the synergy piece. Krenko is great. It's going to hit for a lot of damage pretty quickly. Give us some expendable things to sack. Rampaging Raptor's great. Nice big beefy card, but don't think they're as insane. And we have 4 3-drop creatures already, and we are pretty low on the cheap removal. So this time I am going to actually take the excellent cheap interaction and grab an Unholy Heat here. And still play Revoker on curve. It's not going to be exciting, but I think it's more playable than our Gray Merchant right now. Taking a look at our deck. Alright, pack 2, pick 4. There's the Abrade. We take the Abrade, we hope to get back a Woe Strider or a Phoenix of Ash. Getting either of those back will be great for us, and I think either of those are more likely to come back to us than Abrade, because even controlling red decks, maybe like red-green ramp, that just wants to get big green creatures late game and just use early red burn spells, or blue-red spells. Like, any red deck is going to want Abrade, whereas only the super aggressive ones want Phoenix of Ash. And then Woe Strider, not every black deck wants Woe Strider, just the aristocracy ones. So I think we take Abrade and we get one of these two back. That is going to pan out poorly if we get neither back, but I think we should be able to get one. Pick 5 now. There's the 5-drop Flying Menace 5/5. Almost impossible to block, and if your opponent kills it, it has a great death trigger. So we could take Junji the Midnight Sky. Could also take the Null Priest, which is fun, or Beaumont Courier can end up being a lot of card draw. Get this down turn 1, get a bunch of attacks in with it, then replace your hand with whatever it drew. I like these a lot, the Midnight Sky and the Beaumont Courier. Embercleave wants a lot of attacking creatures as cheap as possible, as does Judith. I'm actually going to go Courier over the Midnight Sky here. Get that curve lower, get more cheap attacking creatures. Now we have a Grim Lavamancer, great if our graveyard starts getting filled. Mephit's Enthusiasm's a great cheap burn spell, it's going to make our next creature even bigger. And the Forgefire Automaton's pretty nasty. So a 3-mana 3/2, at the beginning of your upkeep, return a creature with power less than its power from the graveyard to the battlefield. That's kind of insane. So like a 3-mana 3/2, we play it, and then if it sticks around until our next upkeep, we pick up a dead Beaumont Courier, and now it's a 3/1 Beaumont Courier. Super nasty, but I think again we take that cheap removal. And hopefully nobody reads the alchemy cards and we can get the Forgefire thing back. I'll take Terror of the Peaks here over Searing Blood because we are going to be a 2-color deck. I don't want to make our mana costs too restrictive and too difficult, like double red costs on a 2-mana burn spell. So take the Terror this time, since I did just take 3 much easier to cast removal spells in a row there with Unholy Heat into Abrade into Enthusiasm. Now I'll take the big finisher creature. And this is an excellent one. It's a 5/4. If your opponent wants to try to kill it, they have to spend some life to do so, and if they don't try to kill it, you're attacking with 5 power in the sky and dealing damage to your opponent or any of their creatures whenever you play another creature. Really good way to get a lot of extra damage in late. Now we have a Play with Fire and a Blade of the Oni. 2-mana 3/1 Menace, pretty nuts for aggressive decks. I'm going to go for the Blade over the Play with Fire. Again, now that we have actually given ourselves some breathing room by making sure we have a good amount of cheap interaction, we've got 4. cheap removal spells, I can start spending the picks on the excellent 2-drop style creatures. I don't think I've ever read this card before. I probably have, but I've forgotten. Make your opponent discard a non-creature non-land card. So it's just Thoughtseize, basically. I guess I'll take Thoughtseize. It's Thoughtseize, but you can't get rid of lands, and if you miss, you draw a card. Oh, non-creature. Oh, never mind. Never mind. I'm very bad at reading. It can't get rid of creatures. It's actually kind of awkward. So it's a duress, but if you miss, you draw a card. That's significantly worse. I'm actually not interested in that. I don't think there was anything else in that pack that mattered. Maybe a Walking Ballista would have been okay in here, whatever that X-mana artifact creature was, but who knows. Alright, we get the Rampaging Raptor back. Pretty happy with that. Big trampling, hasting beef coming up. Get the Woe Strider to come back. Let's go. Take the Sword of Forge and Frontier. Oh, I think I will be cutting this. 5 mana is quite the initial mana investment, as good as this is once you get it equipped. Alright, pack 3, pick 1. There are some beautiful cards here. So Gix draws us a card anytime we deal combat damage to an opponent, which is nuts. It's a lot of card draw. Goldspan Dragon's a huge finisher that spits out a ton of treasure as well. Ayara's Oathsworn is a nice cheap menace creature. Keeps getting bigger every time it hits our opponents. Such excellent, excellent stuff here. I think I want to take Gix. I really like the idea of having a nice card draw engine as we're beating our opponent down. But whatever we get back between Sleeper, Oathsworn, Goldspan Dragon, be pretty excited about. This is the unexciting Liliana, though. The weaker Liliana, for sure. This deck doesn't really need mana rocks, but 2 mana rocks are the better ones. I think I'd rather just take a Pylon here. Urabrask's Forge is nice. It gives you a good matchup against most control decks. Control decks are going to sit there and keep board wiping you and casting 1-for-1 creature removal spells. None of those really work well against the Urabrask's Forge. This will just eventually kill them. So it's a really, really nice sideboard card, but since we are in best of 1, I think I'd rather just take the consistent removal spell. Shieldred's also a nice finisher, but 5 mana is a bit much. Take a Cult Conscript here. Fine for our aggro deck. I'm not going to play a ton of instants and sorceries. I don't think Sedgemoor Witch is super exciting. Sky Sovereign's always fine. Stonecoil's always fine. I think I like the Cult Conscript here. Just get a 1 mana 2/1 into the deck. I've got another black-red duel, but it's a tapped land, which is rough. We don't really want tapped lands. Collective Brutality's interesting. -2/2 to something, or we can make our opponent discard an instant or sorcery. Drown and Ichor is just gonna like kill a small creature. The whole proliferate part doesn't really matter to us, generally. I think Brutality's a little more exciting for that flexibility. But I think that also could just get cut. Okay, Pillar of Flame's much better. Pillar of Flame's like Brutality for 1 mana. It's like -2/2 to a thing, or we shoot our opponent in the face and finish them off. Swarm Saboteur's annoying for sure. Get a bunch of Virus Beetles to play. Intervention. 2 mana for 2 damage, 3 mana for 4 damage. Not a terrible deal for clearing something out, and then sometimes you just kill your opponent with the other half. Intervention's kind of cool. I think I prefer just Pillar of Flame, though. Very consistently good deal for 1 mana. What is this? Target opponent discards a card, then they may discard an additional card. If they don't, We get a duplicate of a random card from their library into our hand. That doesn't seem good. Seems goofy. Seems hilarious. Doesn't seem good, though. I guess I'll take it anyway. Over the 2-mana 2/2 red dork. Soul Servitude. Or Inquisition of Kozilek, or Flames of the Firebrand. Actually, we could play Deathrite Shaman. I don't think this is really a Deathrite Shaman deck, though. There's no, like, fetch lands or anything, which makes Deathrite a lot weaker. Yeah, I like Archpriest at the top of the curve, or Inquisition for some hand disruption. Archpriest is really nice at the top end of the curve, because we just play this, put a counter on our attacking creature, attack in with it, boom, reanimate any creature from our grave. Seems like another great 5-drop to have at the top ends. Don't like Spikefield Hazard that much, as 1 damage to any target. It's not the greatest disruption, so I'll take the 2-drop creature, although Dragon Skull Summit's nice too for that fixing. Get another 2-drop super aggro creature. Get the Sheoldred. I'm gonna cut Sedgemoor Witch. The Canyon Slough. Although, this is a pretty good Deadly Dispute deck. I don't know what I would cut for it, though. I can definitely just play Slough over another land. Take a Swarm Saboteur. Fiend Artisan. Might run that. Double black is a restrictive mana cost, but the ability's very fun. Say I get something expendable like a Virus Beetle or a Decayed Zombie, then I can sacrifice it to tutor, search my deck for any creature and put it into play, as long as I have enough mana for that creature. Could be fun. There's a lot of little fun things that we could be doing here. But I think I just need to get really focused and aggressive. Probably ditch a lot of the fun stuff like Undercity Plunder, the more goofy things. The Fiend Artisan as well seems pretty slow. Alright, we're at 48 cards, and this is a look at our curve of creatures. And our non-creatures all in one gigantic pile. Revoker, more often than not, just a 2-mana 2/1. Artisan's going to be pretty slow. I think these are our weakest 1-drops, 2-drops. Shambling Ghast is also a bit slow. 3 mana, love Judith, love Crucius. Legion Warboss is super aggro, Fable's incredible, Gix is great card draw, Woe Strider might be a little too narrow, a little too specific. Looking at our non-creature cards, potential cuts there are... Soul Servitude, like 3 mana, make our opponent sack a non-token creature. That's a little bit much. It's usually like a 2-mana effect, but the bonus is we could discard a card to draw a copy of whatever creature they sacked. But I don't think that's incredible unless we're like flooding out. And then Undercity Plunder also kind of narrow, kind of goofy. Like, make them discard a card and then draw a card from their deck. 2 mana, your opponent discards a card, you draw 1 card. Doesn't really seem like a card we want in an aggro deck. Then Collective Brutality, just for its mana cost, is the weakest at killing things. So if I cut all of those... We cut a 5-drop like the Archpriest, since Sheoldred is insane and Terror of the Peaks is insane. I think these are both just a bit stronger. And we don't want too many 5-mana things. Could be the thing, just cut the Archpriest and boom, we've got 15 creatures and a Fable of the Mirror Breaker, so 16 creatures. Decent aggro count. Great cheap interaction. I think this is a fine place to be. I'll call it a deck there. Alright, here we have a look at our finished deck list for today. A very nice Rakdos aggro deck. A great curve of creatures, a lot of which have some really explosive things going on later in the curve. Early on, we've got a lot of great menace threats like Ayara's Oathsworn and Blade of the Oni, as well as some creatures that buff themselves like Misery's Shadow, Swarm Saboteur to give us just an army of virus beetles potentially. And then when we get to our higher mana cost, that's where some really nasty things start happening. Legion Warboss is an army in a can, constantly spitting out goblin tokens. Judith is buffing our entire board. Crucius is going to be giving us treasure tokens and letting us grab more expensive or less expensive cards depending on what we need. Gix is going to keep drawing us cards as we're hitting our opponents. And then we've got the super big finishers, Raptor for a bunch of hasty trampley damage, Rankle for flying hasty damage and a lot of flexibility, then Terror of the Peaks and Sheoldred for a ton of incredible stuff at the top of the curve. We have tons of cheap interaction with Kolagon's Command, Mephit's Enthusiasm, Braid, Unholy Heat, and Pillar of Flame, not to mention the Pylon that we can surveil early as well. And we've got an Embercleave to sneak out some cheap victories out of nowhere. Super nice looking Rakdos aggro deck. Pretty excited to play with it, have some nice simple magic today after a couple control decks in a row, so without further ado, let's hop into gameplay and see how it does. Here we are for game 1 on the draw. Cut off of a color here, I don't think it's keepable. This is much better, we can drop the 5-drop and see where things go. Our opponent starts with Fetid Pools, a black-blue dual land. Don't like seeing that. That's a potentially pretty controlling color pair. And that is one of the most controlling color trios. Not a fan of that at all. Drop the Oathsworn here, a menacing threat that's going to keep getting bigger as it hits our opponent. I think it's the best standalone threat we can play right now. But our opponent is on Esper, white, blue, and black, so they are probably a very controlling deck here. Get the mana for Crucius here. That is likely what I'll play. Discarding Occult Conscript to draw a card. We do get a hit in with the Oathsworn and a +1/+1 counter onto them. There's the counterspell for Crucius. Not just a counterspell, but the actual factual OG. Just double blue counter target spell. Here's a Mind Stone for some mana. That is all. So we hit land 4. But I don't have enough black sources to do 2 things. So I guess I might as well pre-combat Judith, but they likely just counterspell again here. Guess I just attack with Oathsworn and see if they spend mana on removal. They do not. So Oathsworn gets bigger again. Alright. Cast the Judith. And she resolves. They're going to go for Thirst for Discovery. Draw 3, discard a basic. They've got 6 mana up now. All their lands and a Mind Stone. And there's the Day of Judgment. 2-for-1 board wipe. Get some Judith damage in at least. There's the second black source, so now we can start getting a board state here. Since I do get to cast 2 spells this turn. We've got a Jadar and a Misery's Shadow. Our opponent is going to opt. Scry 1 and draw a card. Scry to the top. You hate to see it. Get another land here. Definitely redundant. Let's send in the squad. Might get Torrential Gear Hulk or something here. Nightclub Bouncer, not quite as bad, but still pretty horrible. Bounce Misery Shadow, kill Jadar for free. Alright, we're playing off the top. Had 0 interaction this game, which is pretty bad. Well, last game. Breach the multiverse. Get the biggest creature or planeswalker from each graveyard onto their board. And this kind of shows just how insane March of the Machine was as a draft format. That the bombs in March of the Machine are some of the biggest bombs in the entire Arena Cube. And Arena Cube features cards from every set on Arena. But still, some of the biggest, most explosive, most grown-testy bomb rares in Arena Cube are Breach the Multiverse and Atali from March of the Machine. So, yeah, we are completely dead. They get Crucius into Teferi, and we're playing off the top in an aggro deck. Find a Fable. Really strong card, but it's way late in the game for that. Teferi gets to pop off here. Counter onto the clone and onto Teferi. Alright. We're out of here. They're even already winning without an approach to the second sun, and now there's no shot. They're going to be at 18 there. Nothing we draw into that's going to break through that board state and deal 18 damage in the next few turns, because Teferi's also drawing additional cards, digging to the approach quicker, so... Pretty brutal loss for game one. We had a very low interaction hand, got controlled out a bit, also had the mulligan down a card. Just not a great matchup for us to start things off with, so hopefully we can turn things around as we head into game number 2. Alright, don't have to mulligan this time, which is good. But our mana is looking like a really big issue. This is part of what I was saying earlier, where it is much better to be monocolored when you're trying to be a super aggressive deck like this, because as we saw last game, stumbling at all on our mana has a really hefty cost, because the slower, more controlling decks can absolutely stumble on mana in their early game, because then they're just going to play some massive nonsense later. But we're focused on killing them before they play that stuff, so if we stumble and we can't play 2-mana cards on turn 4, it's a super huge deal. Think... There's way too many choices right now. Already? Everything's so cheap. I'm going to play Legion Warboss next turn, so what's the best card to have alongside a Legion Warboss? I feel like it's Oath Sworn, but Swarm Saboteur is the most annoying card for our opponent to deal with if they don't play their own creature here. We are runner for control decks. It's the same color trio as well. Blue, white, black yet again. And they're on the play with Mana Rock into Mana Rock, which is disgusting. Really sad start to this draft. I don't think there's a lot we could have done last game, and there's not much we can do about our opponent being on the play and playing 2 Mana Rocks in a row. doesn't even really matter what kind of deck their deck is at that point, whether it's control or combo or ramp. I mean, it's clearly not aggro, but any of those three decks, just going turn 2 mana rock into turn 3 mana rock and having 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana available when we have 3, gotta be pretty deadly. I'm still gonna try my best, but I mean, they just play a basic and they have 7 mana up now while I'm playing 3 mana worth of spells. Yep, there we go. Probably dead. There's Day of Judgment again. The exact same board wipe, back at it. There's Charming Prince. Our opponent is making use of the fact that they have twice as much mana as us by spending 4 to wipe the board and 2 to get another blocker. Raptor's a solid draw, because we can just immediately jam that in. Even if it gets killed, at least it gets some damage in first. Our opponent is down to 3 cards in hand. That is the one benefit that we have here, is that they had to... Oh my god. They had to spend multiple cards to get those mana rocks on the board, so they don't have too many left in their hand, but one of them is Elesh Norn, so that's just wonderful. It probably top-decked that, because if they had it last turn, they could have played it, killed my Warboss, my 1-1, and made my Oathsworn a 1-1 menace. So I think they would have just played it last turn if they already had it, instead of doing Day of Judgment. And now I can't kill Elesh Norn, because we can't kill the Charming Prince unless Elesh Norn's off the board, and Shieldred makes them sack 1 creature of their choice. I can't play anything or it just dies. Can't even ninjutsu this in. Yeah, no, we just straight scoop to Elesh Norn. I guess I could still cast a 2-3 Shieldred and make them sack the Charming Prince. It just doesn't do anything for us. And this way we might be able to just block Charming Prince and buff the Rampaging Raptor to get that out of the way. There's a Hostage Taker to just use our own Rampaging Raptor against us. We're down to 8. There's definitely no way Shieldred kills Elesh Norn. Well, we got one choice. Make them sack 1 creature and then chump block another, but we're still just dead because now they just haste out a 6-6. They just sack the Charming Prince. Haste out the 6-6. I chump block one of the 4-5s and take 10 damage. All right, here we are for game 3, having some really, really rough luck today. Just some of the push and pull of Arena, the yin and yang of life. Sometimes you get super lucky and you can do some gross stuff, and sometimes you just get absolutely smashed with really nothing you can do, and that is how today is shaping up to be here. Game 1, we had to mulligan, start off down a card against a great control deck. In game 2, I don't think any deck would win that game. Our opponent had 7 mana when we had 3, and just started playing Elesh Norn into creatures. So, not much you're going to do there either. think we drop the Oathsworn, and next turn I have the mana to play a Jadar and Pillar of Flame the Spirit in the same turn. Liliana the Last Hope cannot kill our Oathsworn, but it stops it from damaging them, which does shut off its ability, which is pretty annoying. Enthusiasm can hit Planeswalkers, right? Yeah. So we could just Enthusiasm Liliana and Pillar the Spirit. Probably where I'm at here. That way Oathsworn can actually hit them next turn. I like that we both had to read Selfless Spirit and make sure that it couldn't give Liliana Indestructible. Lingering Souls. That card is filthy. 4 1/1 flyers. Only 2 right now, but that's still enough to kill Oathsworn before it deals damage to them and gets any bigger. Have to wait for our Ember Cleave before we can send in. Urborg Scavengers. That gets to exile any creature from a grave and gain its abilities, so they exile theirs, and it's a 3/3 flyer for 3. And it gets a +1/+1 counter no matter what it exiles. Doesn't even have to exile creatures, so by the time it attacks, it's a 3 mana 4/4 flyer? Good lord. Alright, well, I mean, we just play Sheoldred to kill that then. I'm not on the Ember Cleave plan anymore. Make them sack a non-token creature, because that thing is going to be just super gross. They need 8 or more cards in their grave for me to use this. They've got 3, so we're never going to flip Sheoldred at this rate, but that's fine. We can just throw an Ember Cleave on her. Never mind. She's exiled. And now they can just pick up the Urborg Scavengers next turn. Or Liliana the Last Hope. Either way is pretty gross. I guess not next turn. The turn after next turn is when they do it. Alright, this is going to be an awesome Ember Cleave. We get it out of the way before it gets taxed by the Elspeth Conquers Death. But yeah, this Ember Cleave is super good on the Oathsworn because then it triggers twice. It's double the counters. Alright, I've got a 5/5 First Strike Trample Menace. If they don't have removal, might be able to just get there before Elspeth Conquers Death triggers and reanimates something. Well, I do have removal. I have a Rankle. And exactly enough to play Rankle and equip. That's lethal. If they don't have interaction. It's 11 damage plus 2 from Rankle drawing everybody cards. Although I'll go for the discard here, because if they don't... The only way they might not die here is if I have each player draw a card and take a damage, and then they draw into like Swords to Plowshares to exile Rankle. Alright. Well, that was an incredible draw. If it weren't for that Rankle off the top, we might still just be losing that game, because then they're going to pick up the Scavengers. I still have an Ember Cleave to move around. So it's not like completely over, but without top decking a Rankle, all they have to do really is clear out Jadar, and then I have nothing but an Ember Cleave with nothing to put it on, so very good draw to end it. So feels good. Balance things out with at least one win here. On the other hand, I was already counting my chickens before they hatched there, and I was ready to go do some other stuff than play Magic after such a bummer of a start to the gameplay, so I guess it's nice to get a win in there on the one hand, but on the other, I was kind of over Magic. I was ready to stop, and now I can't. Now they bring me back in for round number 4. Alright, we're on the play. We've got turn 2 Oathsworn, turn 3 War Boss. That's a keep. That is a keep. We hope to top deck a land for that War Boss, but if we don't, we still have Pillar and a Braid to follow up the Oathsworn. Our opponent is on red with Vindictive Flamestoker, so Oathsworn's just going to die straight up. It's going to get shot by something because they're a red deck. There it is, Searing Blood. Still need 1,000,000 mana to use this, and they have to discard their hand to do it. So I'm not interested in immediately killing the Flamestoker. We'll just keep curving out as long as we can. Xander's Lounge. Let's hold up the instant speed interaction. Mentor up a goblin. And they're just going to get a block in there on a 1/1, that's fine. Alright, we're good. I should have played this Xander's Lounge, because I've got the good 5-drop in hand. It's definitely pretty significantly greedy to just hold it to cycle. That's certainly not the right play. How does this work? Tune any target. Target player discards a card. Destroy an artifact. So I could abrade the Rekindling Phoenix. They get their elemental, and then I can Kolaghan's Command the elemental next turn. I think that's fine. Alright, don't get punished for not playing Xander's Lounge, which is beautiful. Because now I can Pillar Flame a Flamestoker. And Kolaghan's Command. An Elemental. Although I'm still kind of punished because I don't get to play Terror of the Peaks next turn. Which I guess I could have played this turn, had I played the Xander's Lounge. That was just like a huge punt all around, but Legion War Boss is doing its thing very well for us. Choosing to make them discard a card instead of picking up an Oathsworn, because we're not even going to play it this turn, it's going to take a while. Find a Swarm Saboteur. So I deal 6 damage to them if they just block War Boss. They go to 3? I think we do that. I think we do that. Could kill a goblin to hit them for the same amount of damage and then play a Virus Beetle instead of a Saboteur. Don't think it's worth it. I think I'd rather have 4 2/2s than 3 2/2s and a 1/1 here. And then I just play a Terror of the Peaks next turn. If they have a board wipe, like a Burn Down the House or something, we lose. But if they don't have a board wipe, I think our chance of victory is pretty high. So there's a Dragon's Rage Channeler for a chump block. Electrostatic Blast means it's no longer just a chump. It can actually block and kill something. Oh wait, no. That works differently than I thought it did. It is a chump. Yeah, it's a Delirium one. It's not based on the number of instants in their grave specifically. I mean, I think I send in the squad then. I lose a 2/2 to kill a Dragon's Rage Channeler and put them to 1. Cool. And then I cast a Terror of the Peaks where if they cast any kind of removal on it, they die. And if they don't cast any removal on it, I play Misery Shadow next turn and they die. Alright, some sloppy gameplay there. Just not playing my land earlier. Just skipping a land drop for funsies, you know how it is. But Arena is really balancing things out with some very good luck these last two games to counteract that poor luck in the first two. Because I think we played fine in the first two games, but pretty sloppy in the two that we're actually winning. So see if we'll tighten things up as we head into game number 5 now. We are against a Lutri deck, so they've got a companion there. Opponent is on the play. I'm going to keep this, but we do need to hit some lands here. Just going to turn 1 Beaumont Courier, and then turn 2 just play a tap land. Rather than Jadar. I guess I could ninjutsu the Saboteur. Start drawing a bunch of Virus Beetles against this blue-red deck. Blue-red-white. Pretty controlling. I feel like getting a bunch of copies of Virus Beetle is a good idea generally for this matchup. Sure, these two cards are going to be exiled forever, but that was likely to happen anyway. This would just die in some board wipe at some point. Take my Swarm Saboteur. That's tremendously rude. Now they're just gonna start making Virus Beetles against me. They're just gonna blow up my blade and then hit me and put a Virus Beetle in their hand. I guess they don't have any black sources right now, so we might be fine. Think I still play the Blade of the Oni because I still think I should try to trade with it if they attack in. Because even if they don't have any natural black sources, they could find another mana rock that's like mana of any color. And now Elesh Norn means if they play Virus Beetles, if they somehow find a black source and play a Virus Beetle, it's going to make me discard 2. So I think I just take the trade here, and we really hope to hit a land. Beautiful. So I can pile on Elesh Norn, or I can trade Rankle into Elesh Norn with the each player sacks a creature ability. I think I'd rather just pile on, so I can keep Rankle around whenever I cast that. Ooh, I like these cards. Especially Kologon's Command. But I'll keep them both. Narset. Archer of Veils. So we can't play any card draw right now. Oh my god, but they can. Good lord, can they. Sphinx's Revelation, gain X life, draw X cards. That's going to be backbreaking. Whatever line I take here, it's going to be pretty poor against a counter spell. Kologon's Command just gets countered, Rankle just gets countered. So I think I just go for the Rankle, kill Narset. Although Kologon's Command we can do at instant speed, but the big reason to play Kologon's Command is to stop Narset from going, which we can't do at instant speed. I guess I could do it in their upkeep to soak up some of their mana into their counterspell. But let's just Rankle here, I think. Spell Queller. Alright, so we were screwed no matter what, but if I went for Kologon's Command instead, at least I could have soaked up 3 mana during their turn. But yeah, I mean, they would have just Spell Quellered the Kologon's Command anyway. Alright, that's bad. There's Mephit's Enthusiasm to attempt to kill Spell Queller now. Not that it matters that much at this point, because Narset's already done the full value here. But I don't have much else to do. Alright, get a rankle back. Voracious Great Shark. Disgusting. Well, they've only got one option for what to discard the Virus Beetle, because they're not going to discard Sphinx's Rev, so we might hit something good with this Virus Beetle. Yeah! We have Virus Beetled an Agent of Treachery. That's not bad. There's the Sphinx's Rev. Only a draw 3. Not as horrific as it could have ended up being for us. But we're definitely pretty far behind. Finish off Narset for fun. Might as well, right? Play Beaumont Courier over Jadar.
I won't forget our time together.
Neither's going to help me deal with the Great Shark at all, so I'm just going to set up the Courier to get the card draw off of that as soon as possible. I could play both and just not hold up Kolagon's command. Chart a course. If they didn't have a crab, then maybe I could have Kolagon's commanded a Rankle back to cast next turn, and that would be my plan to deal with Great Shark. Maybe I still do that and see if I can find removal for the crab. Destroy the Simulacrum, pick up a Rankle. That's something. Well, there you go. I guess at this point I just use this to kill the Great Shark. I was gonna say, there we go, now we can kill the crab and then Rankle kills the shark. But, also just kill the shark. So we probably do that. Alright, I need the card draw more than they do, so let's both draw a card. What are the chances that we can get an Embercleave Rankle again? Probably very low. Because it would only be if they drew 0 removal and 0 board wipes. Off of like the last 4 extra cards they've drawn recently. Plus this clue token. Between Chart a Course, Solemn, Hard Evidence card draw, the Rankle draw. Alright, that's gross. Kill my Rankle, kill my Virus Beetle, tap my land. Get a 4/4, draw 2. There's Rona. I mean, we've just super mega lost at this point. But let's see what we get from Beaumont Courier. Do I get an Embercleave on this board and then sack the Courier? Or do I just sack the Courier? I think it really matters. They've got 4 cards in hand. They're going to have a 4/4, 1/3 left over. And an 0/3 and a 5th card off the clue. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. Let's just see. Gix, Judith, and Warboss. A Warboss Judith. Play Gix next turn. Pretty terrible blocks here. If I do any damage to Rona, they cast my own Gix against me. It's an opt. Another land. Alright. Well, that was just another game showing what happens when the control decks get too high mana values. Needed to have a more aggressive curve, break through their board state there earlier. Find a quick kill, because we cannot compete toe-to-toe in the late game with those decks. Well, pretty big bummer of a draft. Nice to get at least a couple wins in there, I guess. But I think this deck could have done much better. Just kind of sucks to get paired against 3 really gross control decks and have some pretty poor luck in the first couple matchups. The final match against control, just a bad matchup for us. There wasn't a lot we could do. I don't think we got like significantly unlucky outside of getting paired against control a lot. But the first 2 games, it was like we were paired against control and like mulligan down a card and just super rough there. So brutal stuff. Brutal stuff. Really sad time for the Rakdos aggro deck. Would have loved to hit a lot more mid-range decks. We definitely think could have had a much more solid matchup there. Yeah, overall just getting paired against some cream of the crop control decks is going to end our draft run. So 2 and 3, our first draft run with lower win rate or less wins than losses here. So pretty big bummer there, especially getting to actually play something a little more aggressive again. Just didn't work out for us, but that is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for supporting the channel, as well as you for watching the videos. If you're interested in seeing some more videos like this, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more in your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. Other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.